My name is Lance Thompson, and I am 57 years old. For the past 3 years, I've been raising my son alone after losing my wife to cancer. When Kevin told me he was getting married, I felt nothing but joy. But that evening at dinner, when his fiancée spoke in Chinese, thinking I could not understand, everything changed. The words I heard were not just insulting, they revealed a plan that would destroy my son's life. Before we dive into what happened that night, I would love to know where you are watching this from. If you have ever discovered something that completely changed how you saw someone, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories like this one, because what I'm about to share will show you why sometimes staying silent is the most powerful move you can make. Now let me take you back to that dinner when I heard words that changed everything. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, in a house that holds 30 years of memories. My career took me places I never imagined when I was young. From 1995 to 2005, I worked for an international import-export company, and those 10 years were spent in Shanghai, China. Living there was not just a job assignment, it became a second home. I learned Mandarin fluently, not just for business meetings, but because I wanted to truly understand the culture and the people. I can speak it, read it, write it. The language became part of me during those years. My wife Carol and I met in Shanghai at a business conference in 1996. She was there representing a textile company, and I was negotiating shipping contracts. We fell in love in that vibrant city, surrounded by the sounds of Mandarin being spoken everywhere, the smell of street food vendors on every corner, the energy of a place that never seemed to sleep. We got married in 1997, and Kevin was born a year later in Shanghai. Those were golden years. We would walk along the Bund on Sunday mornings, holding hands, watching the Huangpu River flow past, while Kevin slept in his stroller. Carol and I would practice our Chinese together, laughing when we got the tones wrong, celebrating when locals understood us perfectly. When we returned to the States in 2005, we brought all those memories with us. Kevin grew up hearing stories about Shanghai, though he was too young to remember living there himself. Life was good. I continued working in international trade from Boston, though I no longer traveled as much. Carol worked part-time as a consultant, and we focused on raising Kevin. We gave him everything we could: good schools, summer camps, college education. He grew into a smart, kind young man. He studied computer science at Boston University and became a software engineer. Watching him succeed made every sacrifice worth it. Then 3 years ago, Carol was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. It happened so fast. One day she was fine, the next she was in the hospital getting scan after scan. The doctors tried everything, but the cancer was too aggressive. She fought for 8 months before she passed away in our bedroom, holding my hand with Kevin sitting beside her. Losing her nearly destroyed me. Every corner of our house reminded me of her: the kitchen where she baked cookies every Sunday, the garden where she grew tomatoes and herbs, the living room where we watched old movies together on Friday nights. After Carol died, I could not talk about Shanghai. Every memory of that city was wrapped up with memories of her. The language I had loved speaking felt too painful to use. Kevin knew I had worked internationally, but he never knew the details. He didn't know I spoke fluent Mandarin. It was easier to lock that part of my life away in a box marked "too painful to open." Kevin and I grew closer after losing Carol. It was just the two of us now. We had dinner together twice a week. He would tell me about his projects at work, about his friends, about his life. I lived for those dinners. He was all I had left. Then in January of this year, Kevin called me with news that made my heart swell with hope. He said he had met someone special. Her name was Mei Lin, he told me, and she was different from anyone he had ever dated. She was smart, beautiful, ambitious. They had been dating for 8 months, and he was serious about her. She was Chinese, he explained, born in Beijing but educated in America. She worked in marketing for a tech startup in Cambridge. Kevin's voice on the phone was full of excitement, the kind of joy I had not heard from him since before his mother died. "I'm so happy for you, son," I told him, and I meant it. The thought of Kevin finding love, building a life with someone, maybe giving me grandchildren someday, it filled me with a warmth I had not felt in years. "Can I meet her?" I asked. "Of course, Dad," he said. "How about dinner at your place this weekend? I will bring her over." I agreed immediately and spent the next few days preparing. I wanted to make a good impression. I cleaned the house thoroughly, bought fresh flowers for the dining table, planned a menu that would show I could cook more than just frozen dinners. That Saturday evening, Kevin arrived with May. When I opened the door, I saw a tall, slender young woman with long black hair that fell past her shoulders. She wore a simple but elegant navy dress and carried a bouquet of white lilies and a bottle of red wine. Her smile was bright and seemed genuine. "Mr. Thompson," she said, extending her hand, "it is such an honor to meet you. Kevin talks about you all the time." Her English was perfect with an American accent that had almost no trace of Chinese influence. I was impressed immediately. Come in, I said, taking the flowers and wine. "Thank you for these. You did not have to bring anything." We settled in the living room and May looked around with what seemed like genuine interest. "You have a lovely home," she said. "It feels so warm and welcoming." "Thank you," I replied. "My wife and I bought this place 30 years ago. We raised Kevin here." May's expression softened with sympathy. "Kevin told me about your wife. I'm so sorry for your loss." I nodded, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest that always came when someone mentioned Carol. "Thank you. That means a lot." During dinner that evening, May was charming. She asked about my career and I told her I had worked in import-export dealing with international shipping and trade agreements. I kept it vague, not mentioning Shanghai or China specifically. It was still too connected to Carol in my mind. May talked about her own family. Her parents still lived in Beijing, she explained. She was an only child and they had worked hard to send her to college in America. She had gotten her degree in marketing from NYU and had been working in Boston for the past 4 years. Everything about her seemed perfect. She was polite, engaging, interested in getting to know me. She held Kevin's hand across the table, looked at him with affection, laughed at his jokes. After they left that evening, Kevin called me from the car. "So what did you think, Dad?" he asked. I could hear the hope in his voice. "She is wonderful," I told him honestly. "I can see why you love her." Kevin exhaled with relief. "I'm so glad you like her," he said. "She was nervous about meeting you." "Really?" I asked, surprised. "She seems so confident. She just wants your approval, Dad. You are important to me, so you are important to her." My heart warmed at those words. "She has it," I assured him. "She seems like a great person." I hung up feeling genuinely happy for my son. It seemed like life was finally moving forward in a positive direction after so much loss. 2 months passed, and March arrived with the kind of weather Boston is famous for: cold rain mixed with the last stubborn patches of snow. Kevin called me on a Tuesday evening and I could hear the excitement in his voice before he even said the words. "Dad, I did it. I asked May to marry me and she said yes." For a moment I could not speak. The rush of emotions was overwhelming. Joy for Kevin, sadness that Carol was not here to see this moment, relief that my son had found someone to share his life with. "That is wonderful news, son," I finally managed. "I'm so happy for you. When did this happen?" "Last night," Kevin said. "I took her to that restaurant where Mom and I used to go for special occasions. You remember the one in the North End with the view of the harbor?" I remembered. Carol had loved that place. "I proposed right there at our table," he continued. "I had the ring in my pocket for 2 weeks, just waiting for the right moment." "Congratulations," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Your mother would be so proud." "I know, Dad," Kevin said softly. "I felt her with me last night. I really did." We were both quiet for a moment, sharing the weight of her absence. "So when is the wedding?" I asked, changing the subject before we both started crying. "We are thinking this fall," Kevin said. "October, probably. May wants a medium-sized wedding, nothing too elaborate. About 100 guests. That sounds perfect," I told him. "Let me know how I can help." "Actually, Dad, there is something. May's parents want to come visit from Beijing. They want to meet you before the wedding. And May has a cousin, Gia, who lives in Seattle. She will come too. We were thinking of having a big family dinner at your place if that is okay. All of us together." "Of course," I said immediately. "When were you thinking?" "How about late April?" Kevin suggested. "That gives May's parents time to arrange their visas and flights." "Sounds good," I replied. "Just let me know the date and I will make sure everything is ready." "Thanks, Dad," Kevin said. "You are the best." After we hung up, I sat in my living room for a long time, staring at the photo of Carol on the mantel. "Our son is getting married," I whispered to her picture. "I wish you were here to see it." The house felt emptier than usual that night. Over the next several weeks, Kevin and May came over for dinner regularly to discuss wedding plans. May was always sweet and attentive, asking my opinion on venues, menu options, flower arrangements. She would sit next to Kevin on the couch, holding his hand, occasionally kissing his cheek. She called me Dad Thompson, which Kevin clearly loved. Everything seemed perfect on the surface, but I started noticing small things that made me uneasy. During one visit, May's phone rang and she excused herself to take the call on the back porch. I was in the kitchen cleaning dishes and could see her through the window. She was speaking rapidly in Chinese, and even though I could not hear the words clearly, I could see her face. It was different, harder. Her sweet smile was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. Her gestures were sharp, aggressive even. When she came back inside a few minutes later, the smile was back in place, as if someone had flipped a switch. "Everything okay?" Kevin asked her. "Fine," she said brightly. "Just my mom checking on wedding details. She worries about everything." Another time I walked past the bathroom and heard May on a video call. The door was slightly open and I caught a glimpse of her talking to an older woman, presumably her mother. May was speaking Chinese, and although I could not hear full sentences, I caught fragments. One phrase stood out clearly: to Han Rongi Kongji, he is very easy to control. My stomach tightened. "Who was she talking about, Kevin?" "Me, both of us." I continued walking, not wanting to eavesdrop, obviously, but the words stayed with me, nagging at the back of my mind. I told myself I was being paranoid. May was from a different culture. Maybe she just spoke more bluntly in Chinese, the way many people are more relaxed in their native language. Maybe I had misheard. Maybe she was talking about someone else entirely. I did not want to be the suspicious father who ruins his son's happiness over nothing. Kevin was so in love. He glowed when he talked about May. He was planning their future together, talking about buying a house, having children, building a life. Who was I to throw suspicion on that based on a few overheard words? But the uneasiness would not go away. At the end of April, May called me to finalize plans for the family dinner. "Her parents will arrive on Friday, and we will all come to your house Saturday evening. Is that still good for you?" she asked. "Perfect," I assured her. "I'm looking forward to meeting them." "My mom does not speak much English," May explained, "and my dad knows some basic phrases, but Gia will translate for them." "That is fine," I said. "I will make sure we have a comfortable evening." "Oh, and Dad Thompson." May added, her voice warm and affectionate. "Thank you so much for hosting. It means the world to my family. You are so kind." I felt a twinge of guilt for my earlier suspicions. She sounded so sincere. I spent the week before the dinner preparing carefully. I decided to cook Chinese food, thinking it would make May's parents feel more comfortable. I made kung pao chicken steamed fish with ginger and scallions, mapo tofu, and egg drop soup. I set the dining table with my best dishes, bought fresh flowers, made sure everything was spotless. Kevin came over Friday afternoon to help me prepare. "Dad, you did not have to go to all this trouble," he said, looking at the spread of food I was preparing. "I want to," I told him. "This is important. These are going to be your in-laws. I want them to feel welcome." Kevin hugged me. "You are amazing." You know that Saturday evening arrived cool and clear. I dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt, wanting to look presentable but not overly formal. At 6 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Kevin, May, and 3 people I had never met before. "This is my father," Waylin May said, gesturing to a stern-looking man in his mid-50s wearing a dark suit. "And this is my mother, Yun Lin." Yun was a small, quiet woman with graying hair pulled back in a bun. She smiled shyly but said nothing. "And this is my cousin, Gia." Gia was a young woman in her early 20s, pretty and energetic, wearing jeans and a bright yellow sweater. "Welcome, welcome," I said, shaking hands with Wei and bowing slightly to Yun, who seemed pleased by the gesture. "Please come in." Everyone filed into my home. Wei looked around with an appraising eye, as if calculating the value of everything he saw. Yun stayed close to her husband, speaking to him in quiet Chinese. Gia immediately started chatting with Kevin, who she seemed to already know from video calls. We all moved to the dining room and I brought out the food I had prepared. When Wei and Yun saw the Chinese dishes, their faces lit up. Yun said something in Chinese and Gia translated. "My aunt says this looks wonderful and very authentic." I smiled. "I hope it tastes good too. Please, everyone sit." We settled around the table. Kevin sat next to May, holding her hand. Wei sat at one end, I sat at the other. Yun and Gia filled in the sides. As we began eating, the conversation was polite but somewhat stilted because of the language barrier. Gia did her best to translate, turning to Kevin and me to explain what Wei and Yun were saying, then turning back to translate our responses into Chinese. "The food seems to be a hit," Kevin said, watching Wei pile more kung pao chicken onto his plate. "Your dad is a great cook," May said sweetly, squeezing Kevin's hand. "He went to so much trouble for us." She turned to me. "Thank you, Dad Thompson. This is delicious." "You are welcome," I said. "I'm glad everyone is enjoying it." As dinner continued, May began speaking more frequently in Chinese with her parents and Gia. They would have exchanges that lasted several minutes, laughing and chatting, while Kevin and I sat there smiling politely, not understanding a word. Gia would occasionally translate snippets. They are talking about the wedding, she would say, or they are discussing Beijing and how much it has changed. But I noticed that Gia's translations seemed selective. The conversations in Chinese were long and animated, but her translations were brief and generic. I started paying closer attention, and that is when I heard it. Mei was speaking to her mother, smiling as she gestured toward me. She said in Mandarin, "Zhege lao ju, shen mei du budong." This old pig does not understand anything. Then she laughed a light, tinkling laugh that sounded pleasant to Kevin, who smiled at her adoringly, having no idea what she had just said. My heart began to pound. I kept my face neutral, continued eating my food, but every nerve in my body was suddenly alert. Mei had just called me an old pig. She had insulted me right to my face, confident that I did not understand. Yoon laughed too, covering her mouth with her hand. Gia looked down at her plate uncomfortable but said nothing to Kevin or me. I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I needed to hear more before reacting. I needed to understand what was really happening here. Mei turned to Kevin and said in English, "Honey, try the fish. Dad Thompson made it especially for tonight." Kevin took some fish and smiled at me. "This is really great, Dad." Mei then turned back to her mother and said in Mandarin to Hen Chun Hen Rong Yi Pian, "He is so stupid, so easy to deceive." My hands tightened around my fork. Wei, who had been quiet, spoke for the first time in Mandarin, asking Mei, "Kevin, you duo shao qian?" "How much money does Kevin have?" Mei responded to you, "Yixia jixu danju yao shita fu chin yu qian." He has some savings, but mainly his father has money. I watched Wei nod approvingly. Yoon asked Niqueting Lao tu hui ge ni qian. "Are you sure the old man will give you money?" Mei laughed and said, "Dongran. Ta hen gudu hen yilai Kevin. Jiao wo dui Kevin hao lao tu jiu hui zuo ren he shi." Of course. He is very lonely, very dependent on Kevin. As long as I am good to Kevin, the old man will do anything. I felt sick. I set down my fork carefully, afraid I might drop it. Kevin noticed. "You okay, Dad?" he asked. "Fine," I said, managing a smile. "Just full. Ate too much." Kevin laughed. I know the feeling. Across the table, Mei was still talking to her family in Chinese. Gia asked her Jehun Hu Ne. What happens after the marriage? Mei's smile widened as she answered in Mandarin, "Jehun Ho, Wo Hui, Rang Kevin Ge Wo Qian Mai, Fangzi Zai Beijing, Ran Hoji Nian Ho Li Hun Nazu Yiben Kai Chan." After we get married, I will get Kevin to give me money to buy a house in Beijing. Then, after a few years, divorce and take half his assets. Wei nodded with satisfaction and said, "Kongming de nu heir, smart daughter." Mei continued, "Mego nanren du hensha." American men are all so stupid. They all laughed together except Gia, who still looked uncomfortable. To Kevin and me, it just looked like a family having a pleasant conversation in their native language. Kevin smiled at them, happy that they seemed to be enjoying themselves. He had no idea he was being discussed like a market target, a fool to be taken advantage of. I sat there in my dining room, surrounded by my late wife's furniture, looking at my son's face so full of love and trust, and I felt a rage building inside me unlike anything I had experienced before. But I kept it contained. I smiled. I nodded. I offered more food. Inside, I was making calculations. I needed to hear everything. I needed to understand the full scope of what Mei was planning before I revealed my hand. So I stayed silent and listened. As dinner continued, I excused myself to get more rice from the kitchen. I needed a moment to compose myself. Standing at the stove, I gripped the counter and took several deep breaths. My mind was racing. Everything Mei had said was crystal clear in my understanding. She did not love Kevin. She saw him as a means to an end. She was planning to use him for money, buy property in China, then divorce him and take half of everything. And she thought I was too stupid to ever find out. I filled the rice bowl and returned to the table. The conversation had shifted. Wei was asking Mei more questions. "You are sure he does not suspect anything?" he asked in Mandarin. Kevin, Mei said with contempt in her voice, "Tai ai wo le shen du kan bu jian." He loves me too much to see anything. He thinks I am his true love. She said the words "true love" in English mockingly, then laughed. Yoon asked, "What about the old man?" Mei glanced at me and I kept my expression blank, pretending to be focused on eating. Mei answered her mother in Chinese. The old man is pathetic. He lost his wife 3 years ago and has no life. Kevin is all he has. As long as I keep Kevin happy, the old man will do whatever we want. He probably has a decent amount saved up from his career. After Kevin and I are married, we can start asking for help with various expenses. A down payment on a house, a car, maybe investment opportunities. Americans are generous when it comes to family. They do not question it. We asked, and what if the old man says no? May shrugged. Then we play on Kevin's emotions, make him feel guilty about not helping his wife. Americans always feel guilty. It is their weakness. Besides, once we are married, Kevin's money is partly mine anyway. Community property laws in Massachusetts. Yoon smiled at her daughter with obvious pride. You have planned this well, she said in Chinese. Just be careful not to show your true self until after the wedding. Do not worry, Mama May said. I'm a very good actress. Watch. She turned to Kevin, her face transforming instantly into an expression of pure adoration. Baby, she said in English, I'm so lucky to have you. Kevin's face lit up. I am the lucky one, he said, kissing her hand. Across from them, Wei Yun and May exchanged knowing looks. Gia was staring at her plate, clearly wishing she were anywhere else. I wondered if she had been pressured into participating in this dinner, knowing what her cousin was really like. The conversation continued in Chinese. Gia asked nervously, Do you really not feel anything for Kevin? May's response was cold. He is nice enough, not ugly. But love, no. This is business. My parents did not send me to America so I could work a marketing job forever. I'm going to secure my future. Kevin is the perfect target. Stable job, good income, desperate for companionship after his mother died, and a father with money who will do anything to see his son happy. It could not be better. What if he finds out Gia pressed? He will not. May said confidently, he is too trusting. And even if he had doubts, what is he going to do, accuse me of not loving him? I will just cry, say he is being paranoid. Maybe hint that he is being racist for questioning my motives. American men are terrified of being called racist. He will apologize to me. Gia still looked troubled but said nothing more. I had heard enough, more than enough. Every word was like a knife, not just because of what May was planning to do to Kevin financially, but because she was planning to break his heart deliberately. She was going to marry him. Let him believe they were building a life together, let him fall deeper in love, maybe even have children with him, all while plotting her exit strategy. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. I looked at Kevin. He was serving May more food, making sure she had everything she needed, looking at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. My son, who had already lost so much, was about to lose even more if I did not stop this. Carol's voice seemed to echo in my mind. Protect him, Lance. You have to protect our boy. I will. I promised silently. I will. Wei was speaking again in Mandarin. After the divorce, you will come back to Beijing? May nodded. Yes. I will buy an apartment in Chaoyang district with the settlement money, maybe start a business, live comfortably. And Kevin Wei asked. May waved her hand dismissively. He can find another lonely American woman to console him. I do not care. He served his purpose. The callousness in her voice was chilling. This was not just a scam. This was calculated emotional destruction. I made my decision. It was time. I stood up from the table and everyone looked at me. I would like to say something, I announced. Kevin smiled. Speech time, Dad. Something like that, I replied. I looked around the table, my eyes settling on each person. Kevin, innocent and trusting. May, her mask of sweetness firmly in place. Wei, stern and calculating. Yoon, quiet and complicit. Gia, uncomfortable but silent. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, I began in English. This dinner means a lot to me because family is everything. I paused, then continued. It is interesting how language works. How we use it to communicate, to connect, to understand each other, or sometimes to hide. May's smile flickered slightly, but she kept it in place. I went on still in English. For example, I've spent this whole evening listening to conversations in Chinese, not understanding a word. At least that is what you all thought. Kevin looked confused. Dad, what are you talking about? I took a breath and looked directly at May. Then I spoke in Mandarin, my pronunciation clear and deliberate. Wo ting dong ni shuo de mei yi gazi. I understand every single word you said. The effect was instantaneous. May's face went completely white. Her smile vanished as if it had never existed. Wei's eyes widened in shock. Yoon gasped audibly. Gia looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. Kevin stared at me bewildered. "Dad," he started, but I held up my hand. I continued in Chinese, looking at May. "You called me an old pig. You said I was stupid and easy to deceive. You said Kevin was easy to fool. You discussed your plan to marry him, take his money, buy property in Beijing, then divorce him and take half of everything. You said American men are all stupid. You told your parents I'm pathetic because I lost my wife." My voice was steady, but inside I was trembling with controlled fury. May tried to speak. I do not," she stammered in English, but no coherent words came out. I switched to English and looked at Kevin, whose face had gone from confused to alarmed. "Kevin, I need to tell you something. I speak Mandarin, fluently. I lived in Shanghai for 10 years from 1995 to 2005. I worked there. That is where I met your mother." Kevin's mouth fell open. "What you never told me." "I know, son, and I'm sorry. After your mother died, talking about Shanghai speaking Chinese, it was too painful. Everything about that time reminded me of her, so I locked it away. But tonight I'm grateful I understand the language because I heard everything May and her family said during this dinner. Every single word." Kevin turned to May, his voice shaking. "What is he talking about?" May tried to recover. "Kevin, he is lying. He is confused. Maybe he heard something wrong." "I'm not confused," I said firmly. I switched back to Mandarin and looked at Wei. "Your daughter told you that her plan was to marry Kevin for his money and mine. She said she would get him to buy her a house in Beijing, then divorce him after a few years and take half his assets. She called him easy to control and stupid. She said she does not love him at all. This is all business to her." Wei's face hardened. He started to say something in Chinese, but I cut him off. "Do not bother denying it. I heard every word clearly. I may be 57 years old, but my Chinese is still excellent. 10 years living in Shanghai will do that." Kevin stood up his chair, scraping loudly against the floor. "May," he said, his voice breaking, "tell me this is not true. Tell me he is wrong." May looked at him, and for a moment I saw her trying to decide which strategy to use. Denial, tears, anger. Before she could speak, I continued. "She also discussed how after you were married she would manipulate you for money by making you feel guilty. She said Americans always feel guilty and that it is our weakness. She said that even if you suspected something, she could just accuse you of being racist and you would back down. She has this all planned out, Kevin. Every detail. This is not love. This is a con." Kevin's face crumbled. He looked at May with such betrayal in his eyes that it hurt me to see it. "Is any of this true?" he asked her quietly. May opened her mouth, closed it, then tried a different approach. She turned to me, her voice hard now, all pretense of sweetness gone. "You had no right to spy on our private conversation. That is not spying," I replied calmly. "That is sitting at my own dinner table in my own home. You assumed I was ignorant. You were wrong." Kevin May tried turning back to him, her voice pleading now. "Please let me explain." "There is nothing to explain," Kevin said. His voice was cold in a way I had never heard before. "You do not love me. You never did. I was just a target." May reached for his hand. "Baby, no." Kevin pulled away violently. "Do not touch me. Do not ever touch me again." He looked at his hand at the engagement ring he had given her still on her finger. "Take it off," he said. "May, please." She started crying now. Real or fake, I could not tell. "Take it off." Kevin repeated louder. With shaking hands, May removed the ring. Kevin took it from her and put it in his pocket. Then he looked at Wei and Yoon. "I do not know what you thought you were doing, raising someone who could be this cruel, but you failed as parents. Get out of my father's house, all of you." Wei stood up, trying to maintain dignity. "This is a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," I said in Chinese. I understood every word perfectly. "You raised a con artist and you are proud of her for it. You should be ashamed." Yoon said something quietly in Chinese to May, but I caught it. She said, "Be more careful next time." That enraged me further. "Next time," I said in Chinese, "you are already thinking about the next victim. What kind of people are you?" Gia stood up suddenly. "I'm sorry," she said in English, looking at Kevin and me. "I did not want to be part of this. I tried to tell May it was wrong, but she would not listen." "I believe you," I told her. "You can stay if you want." She shook her head. "I need to go, but I really am sorry." She left quickly. May was crying now, mascara running down her face. "Kevin, please, we can fix this." How Kevin shouted. How do we fix the fact that you do not love me, that you were planning to use me and throw me away, that you called my father names and plotted to steal from both of us? How do we fix that? May. She had no answer. Wei put his hand on May's shoulder. We should leave. Yes, you should. I agreed. And do not contact Kevin again. Do not call. Do not text. Do not show up at his work or his apartment. If you do, I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are. May looked at me with pure hatred now. You are a bitter old man who cannot accept that someone might actually love your son. Nice try, I said. But we both know that is not what this was about. You made a mistake tonight. You assumed I was just another ignorant American. You assumed wrong. They left then, all three of them, Wei supporting May, who was still crying, Yun following silently behind. The door closed and the house fell into absolute silence. Kevin stood in the middle of the living room staring at nothing. Then his legs seemed to give out and he sank onto the couch. He did not cry. He just sat there shaking slightly. I sat down next to him and put my arm around his shoulders. I'm so sorry, son. He did not respond for a long moment. Then he said quietly, How long have you known Chinese? 10 years in Shanghai, I answered. Your mother and I learned together. We took classes at first, then practiced with locals. By the time we left, we were both fluent. Why did you never tell me? Kevin asked. After your mother died, I could not talk about Shanghai without thinking of her. Every memory there included her. The language, the food, the places we went, it was all tied to her. It hurt too much. So I just stopped talking about it. I stopped speaking Chinese. I put that whole part of my life in a box and tried not to open it. Kevin was quiet, processing this. Then he said, How could I be so stupid? How could I not see what she was? You were not stupid, I told him firmly. You were in love. She was very good at deception. She fooled me too at first. I thought she was wonderful. It was only when I started hearing her speak Chinese that I noticed the difference between who she pretended to be and who she really was. Kevin put his face in his hands. I loved her, Dad. I really thought she was the one. I thought we were going to build a life together. I know, I said, tightening my arm around him. I know you did, and I'm so sorry. But better to find out now than after the wedding. Can you imagine if you had married her? If you had children with her? If she had carried out her plan? Kevin shuddered. She would have destroyed me. Yes, I said, she would have, but she did not, because you have a father who speaks Chinese and who will always protect you, no matter what. Kevin finally looked at me, his eyes red. Thank you, Dad. Thank you for saving me. That is what fathers do, I replied. We protect our children, no matter how old they get. We sat there together for a while, not talking, just being present with each other in the wreckage of what had almost been. Finally, Kevin said, Tell me about Shanghai. Tell me about Mom. Tell me everything you never told me before. So I did. For the first time in 3 years, I opened that box of memories. I told Kevin about the day I arrived in Shanghai, overwhelmed by the crowds and the noise and the energy. I told him about the tiny apartment your mother and I shared in the French concession, with its creaky floors and unreliable hot water, but windows that looked out onto a street lined with plane trees. I told him about weekend trips to Hangzhou and Suzhou, about learning to use chopsticks properly, about the time his mother and I got completely lost trying to find a restaurant someone had recommended and ended up eating street food that was better than any restaurant could have been. I told him about the day he was born in a Shanghai hospital, how the nurses had cooed over him and called him a beautiful baby in Mandarin, how your mother and I had cried with joy holding him for the first time. I told him about Sunday mornings walking along the Bund, about the smell of stinky tofu from street vendors that your mother hated but I secretly loved, about practicing calligraphy with an old man in the park who corrected our brushstrokes with patience and humor. Kevin listened to all of it, and I saw his expression change from devastation to something softer. He was learning about his parents in a new way, understanding that we had a whole life in history before he was old enough to remember. By the time I finished talking, it was past midnight. Kevin looked exhausted emotionally and physically. I should go home, he said. Are you going to be okay? I asked. I do not know, he admitted. But I will be. Eventually. Do you want to stay here tonight? I offered. You should not be alone. Kevin hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I think I would like that. I made up the guest room for him, and he went to bed without saying much more. I stayed up for a while, sitting in my living room thinking about the evening. I thought about May and her family, about the cruelty of their plan, about how close they had come to succeeding. I thought about Kevin's broken heart and how long it would take him to heal. I thought about Carol and wished desperately that she were here. She would know exactly what to say to Kevin. She always did. But she was not here, and it was up to me. I had protected Kevin tonight, but that was just the first step. Now came the harder part, helping him heal, helping him trust again, helping him believe that not everyone was like May. I would do it, though, however long it took, because that is what fathers do. The next morning, Kevin came downstairs looking like he had not slept much. I made breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast coffee, strong and black the way he liked it. We ate in silence for a while. Then Kevin said, "I need to tell people the wedding is off. I do not know what to say to them." "Tell them it was not right," I suggested. "You do not owe anyone details." Kevin nodded. "Some people are going to ask questions. Let them ask," I said. "You do not have to answer. Your real friends will understand and support you without needing explanations." "What about May?" Kevin asked. "What if she tries to contact me? Block her number," I said. "Block her on all social media. If she shows up at your work or your apartment, tell security or call the police if necessary. You do not owe her anything. She made her choices. Now she has to live with the consequences." Kevin picked at his eggs. Part of me wants to understand why. Why would someone do this? Why be so cruel? "Some people see relationships as transactions," I said. "May clearly views marriage as a business opportunity, not a partnership. Maybe she learned it from her parents. Maybe it is how she was raised to think. It does not matter. What matters is that she does not get to hurt you anymore." Kevin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Were you ever suspicious of her before last night?" I admitted I started noticing small things in the past few weeks. The way her face changed when she spoke Chinese on the phone. Some phrases I overheard that did not sit right, but I was not sure enough to say anything. I did not want to be the paranoid father ruining your happiness over nothing. "You were not paranoid," Kevin said. "You were right. I wish I had said something sooner," I told him. "Maybe I could have saved you some pain." Kevin shook his head. "You saved me from a lot more pain down the road. If I had married her, if we had bought a house together, had kids, and then found out, it would have been so much worse. You stopped it in time. That is what matters." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You are going to be okay, son. It does not feel like it now, but you will be." Over the following days and weeks, Kevin went through the process of dismantling a relationship and a future he had believed in. He called the venue and canceled the reservation, losing his deposit but not caring. He told his friends the wedding was off, dealing with their questions and concerns as best he could. He returned gifts that had already arrived, wrote notes explaining that the wedding would not be happening. He removed May from his social media, blocked her number, deleted photos of them together from his phone. May tried to contact him multiple times. She called from different numbers. She sent emails. She even showed up at his apartment building once, but Kevin refused to come down. She sent a long text message saying she was sorry that she had made mistakes, that she really did love him, and could they please talk. Kevin showed me the message, and I helped him craft a response. It said simply, "I heard what you said in Chinese. I know the truth. Do not contact me again." After that, she stopped trying. Kevin threw himself into his work, taking on extra projects, staying late at the office. He started going to the gym regularly, working out his anger and hurt on the treadmill and the weights. He reconnected with old friends he had neglected while dating May. Slowly, gradually, I watched my son begin to heal. It was not a straight path. There were bad days when he was angry or sad or felt like he would never trust anyone again. But there were also good days when he laughed at something funny, when he made plans for the future, when I saw glimpses of the old Kevin returning. We spent more time together than we had in years. Kevin came over for dinner twice a week, and we started a tradition of watching old movies together on Friday nights, the way I used to do with Carol. Kevin asked more questions about Shanghai, and I found that talking about it was not as painful as it used to be. In fact, it felt good to share those memories, to bring that part of my life out of the shadows and into the light. One evening, about 4 months after the disastrous dinner, Kevin and I were sitting on my back porch drinking beer and watching the sunset. Kevin said, "I've been thinking about taking a trip." "Where to?" I asked. "China," he said. "I want to see Shanghai. I want to see where you and Mom lived, where I was born. I want to understand that part of our history." I felt my eyes sting with tears. "I think that is a wonderful idea," I told him. "I would like to go with you," Kevin said. "Would you come with me?" "I will," I promised. "We will go together." We spent the next few weeks planning the trip, looking at flights and hotels, making lists of places we wanted to visit. Having something to look forward to seemed to lift Kevin's spirits even more. He started dating again, casually, coffee dates and movies, nothing serious. He was cautious now, more careful about who he let into his life, but he had not given up on finding love. That was what I wanted for him. Not to become bitter or closed off, but to heal and try again. 6 months after that dinner, Kevin and I flew to Shanghai. Walking through the streets where Carol and I had lived all those years ago was both painful and cathartic. I showed Kevin our old apartment building, still standing but renovated. We ate at restaurants we used to love. We walked along the Bund, and I told Kevin about pushing his stroller there on Sunday mornings. We visited the hospital where he was born, which had been modernized but was still recognizable. One afternoon, we sat in a tea house in the Yew Garden drinking jasmine tea, and Kevin said, "I understand now why you could not talk about this place after Mom died. Being here, I feel close to her. I can imagine her here with you." I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "She loved Shanghai," I finally said. "She loved our life there, and she loved you more than anything." Kevin smiled. "I know. And she loved you. You two had something special. We did?" I agreed. "And I hope you find that too, son. With the right person this time." When we returned to Boston, something had shifted in both of us. I felt lighter, as if by returning to Shanghai and facing those memories, I'd released some of the grief I had been carrying. Kevin seemed more at peace too, more comfortable with himself, more confident. He had survived betrayal and heartbreak, and he had come through it stronger. I was proud of him. About 8 months after the dinner, Kevin met someone new. Her name was Sarah, and she was a teacher at a local elementary school. He brought her to meet me for dinner one evening, nervous and hopeful. Sarah was kind and genuine, with a warm laugh and an obvious affection for Kevin. As I watched them together, I saw something I had never seen with May. It was balanced. They listened to each other. They laughed together. There was no performance, no mask, just two people who genuinely enjoyed being together. After they left, Kevin called me from the car, just like he had after his first dinner with May. "So what did you think, Dad?" I smiled. "I think she is wonderful. And more importantly, I think she is real." I heard Kevin exhale with relief. "Thank you, Dad. That means everything." Over time, life moved forward. Kevin and Sarah became serious. I got to know her better and grew to love her like a daughter. She brought joy back into Kevin's life in a way that seemed natural and unforced. There was no talk of marriage yet. They were both taking things slowly, but I could see a future there. And that was enough. As for me, I found that speaking Chinese again had reconnected me with a part of myself I had buried. I started attending a Chinese language meetup group in Boston, practicing conversation with other speakers, keeping my skills sharp. I also started volunteering at a community center that helped new immigrants from China adjust to life in America. Using my language skills to help others felt meaningful, like I was honoring the years Carol and I spent in Shanghai. I was no longer just sitting in my house alone, waiting for Kevin to visit. I had a purpose again, a life again. Sometimes I thought about that dinner, about how close May came to destroying my son's future. I thought about the look on her face when I spoke to her in Chinese, the shock and fear when she realized her plan had fallen apart. I didn't feel guilty about exposing her. I felt only relief that I had been able to protect Kevin. I never heard from May again. I do not know if she went back to China or stayed in America. I do not know if she found another target or learned something from her failure. I do not care. She is not part of our lives anymore, and that is all that matters. What I do know is that sometimes the things we hide from the painful memories we lock away can end up being the very things that save us. If I had not lived in Shanghai, if I had not learned Chinese, if I had not been listening that night, everything would have been different. Kevin would have married May. She would have carried out her plan. He would have been devastated financially and emotionally. But because I understood the language, because I had that specific skill from a specific time in my life, I was able to stop it. Carol used to say that everything happens for a reason. I never fully believed that. Some things just happen randomly, cruelly. But maybe some skills, some experiences, some parts of ourselves that we think are useless or painful, maybe they are waiting for the moment when they are needed most. That night at dinner was that moment for me. The language I learned with my wife in a city halfway around the world decades ago became the tool that protected our son. Now, over a year after that dinner, I sit on my porch on Sunday mornings with a cup of coffee and I think about Carol. I think about Shanghai. I think about Kevin and Sarah and the future they are building. I think about how life can surprise you, how the past can reach forward and touch the present in unexpected ways. I'm 58 now, a year older than I was when this story began. I'm not the lonely widower I was then, stuck in grief, afraid to remember. I'm someone who has reopened old wounds and found they have healed stronger. I am someone who protected his child and connected with him in ways I never had before. And I am someone who learned that speaking up at the right moment in the right language can change everything. That night at dinner, when May called me an old pig who did not understand anything, she was wrong. I understood more than she ever imagined, and that understanding saved my son's life. For that I will always be grateful. Grateful for Shanghai, for the years there, for the language I learned. Grateful for Carol, who shared that adventure with me. And grateful that when it mattered most, I remembered how to speak. Have you ever had a moment where a skill from your past suddenly became crucial in your present? Maybe you learned something years ago that ended up saving you or someone you love. I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share this video with anyone who might need to hear it. And do not forget to subscribe so you do not miss future stories about life's unexpected turns and the ways we protect the people we love. Thank you for watching and for taking the time to hear my story. I hope it reminds you that your experiences, even the painful ones, even the ones you want to forget, they all become part of who you are. And sometimes they become exactly what you need to face whatever comes next. Take care of yourselves and the people you love. Trust your instincts. And remember that speaking up, even when it is hard, even when it is scary, is often the bravest and most important thing you can do. Until next time.